So you're pursuing a goal which you remember feeling really excited and jazzed about, but the reality is that every day stuff comes up, and before you know it, you look at that goal and you think, I don't even remember why I set this, I'm nowhere near achieving it, and I feel completely unmotivated. Well, you're in luck, because in this video we're going to talk about how to stay motivated. So recently I was asked how I get and stay motivated, and the previous video talks about how to get motivated, and in this video we're going to talk about staying motivated, because the reality is that once you set off in pursuit of a big goal, there are going to be so many objections, so many obstacles along the way, and you've got to find a way of getting through them and keeping your energy up, even when you might otherwise let your energy flag. As someone who runs a 100-person company, I know that the hardest thing in the world is to maintain energy levels at all times, because as any company grows, it becomes a kind of reverse filter for the really gnarly problems, like easy problems, fun problems. The fun stuff happens on the front line, and then the easy problems get filtered way before they reach you. So the stuff that gets to you is like the gnarly stuff that nobody else can sort. It's really important to keep energy up, keep motivated, keep aligned with your goals during those periods. Otherwise, it's all too easy to let the energy come down, and then that filters through the rest of the organization. So let's talk about how to stay motivated. So how do you stay motivated when the world seems to be conspiring against you? Well, for me, there are three key factors. Number one, habits. Number two, reminders. And then the third one is really important. It's the militant removal of any possible temptations. So let's go through each of these in turn. Habits. I talked about habits in the last video. For me, habits have an energy, a momentum to them, which is really powerful. As you know, if you've ever tried to break a bad habit, it's not easy because these behaviors become so ingrained they're almost part of our being. But we can use this energy, which can often be bad, and we can actually use it as a strength because we can choose to form positive habits instead. These positive habits are just as hard to break as negative ones. If you watch a river flowing, a river never has to think about where it's going to go next. If you watch a river flow, a river never has to decide where to go. It never wakes up in the morning and says, shall I go downhill? Shall I go uphill? Shall I go sideways? A river follows the course that it's been set for years, sometimes hundreds of years. Rivers never get distracted. They never have to avoid temptation. They know exactly where they're going because they've built that route, they've built that channel over many years. In other words, they've formed a habit. Now, a river starts out as a bit of water flowing along a piece of land, and it makes a tiny little track as it does it. Then the next time it flows, the track gets a little bit deeper, and so on and so on and so on, until that channel is so deep, even if the river wanted to go sideways, it can't because those banks are so deep and so strong. It's that habit which keeps the river moving along that same track. If you've ever tried to shake a bad habit, you know it's hard, but it's only as hard as trying to shake a good habit. Now, one variant of a habit is an addiction, and addiction has such negative connotations. People think of addictions as bad, as times when their behavior isn't really under their control. But actually, I think addictions and habits can be really positive. For example, I've been addicted to going to the gym every day. My wife's exactly the same. So every day, wherever we are, we'll go to the gym every day, which means that when we're on holiday, we'll tend to choose a holiday place that has a gym. Now, you could say, well, you know, it's not healthy to be addicted to the gym. Well, it's healthier to be addicted to the gym than it is alcohol or Candy Crush or whatever. So people are addicted to all sorts of things. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. Some people are addicted to eBay, some people are addicted to taking photos of airplanes, some people are addicted to buying Apple products. The question is, what addictions have you chosen, and do they actually get you closer to your goals? Because I believe that everybody has the addictive personality built in. You know, you hear people say, oh, I've just got a really addictive personality. Well, I believe that actually it's fundamentally baked into all of us, and actually it's a bit of a survival mechanism, because the reality is that we're all addicted to things. We're addicted to breathing, we're addicted to eating, to sleeping, to staying alive. So these are protectionary measures that actually keep us alive and keep us thriving. So the first key to staying motivated when you're pursuing a goal is to make sure that you've baked in the behaviors required to get to that goal as habits. Make sure you've done enough reps of those things that it feels second nature to you. Whether that's setting a meeting with yourself every day to keep yourself on track with a particular work goal, whether it's going to the gym or exercising every day. So decide what the behavior is that you need to cultivate, and then then commit to forming a habit. It's much easier to build a habit for exercising, for example, than it is to motivate yourself to go every time you actually need to. If you just build it as a habit, then it's set and forget. You never have to think about it again. Key number 2 is reminders. Now, in the first video, I talked about how, for me, setting a reward that goes along with a goal is a really important motivator to get me to pursue that goal. And having constant reminders of what that reward is going to be is the thing that more often than not keeps me on track with what I'm supposed to be doing. When I don't feel in the mood, or a roadblock has come in the way, or I'm just feeling low energy, if I think back to that reward, oh yeah, this is why I'm going to do it, this is what it's going to mean for me, then I find it much easier to get motivated again. Now, I'm quite a materialistic guy, I can't deny it. It's something that drives me, and I've learned not to be ashamed of it and not to kind of bury it or think that it's wrong. I've learned to embrace it, because actually the energy that my drive to do certain things so that I can have toys is actually really strong, and it's created a lot of good in the world. So one of my worst and most shameful experiences in life was being pulled over because I was driving this horrendous car because it was awful and I had no money. So that quite quickly developed a track in my brain that said I'm never going to go there again. So in the early days of starting the business, what I did was I set a goal to have a Range Rover Sport because it had always been the car that I'd wanted to drive. So I posted it on my Instagram, and you can actually go back in my Instagram feed and find that original post where I said, right, I've locked that, that's in the vision bank, I'm going to get there. So what I then did is I set goals about the business's growth, at which point I'd buy that car. The amount of energy that goal gave me was ridiculous. By the time I got that car and hit that goal, that car had paid for itself probably 50 times over. The amount of work I put in and energy I put in to build the business was ridiculous, and it was all because that goal had meaning for me now. So in the process of doing all of that, of course, we created dozens and dozens of jobs. We got ridiculous results for our clients. We made a lot of people very happy in the process of doing that. And key to that was me working out what my motivation was and what my reward was going to be for getting that thing. So it's about understanding what's most important to you. It doesn't have to be a material thing. It can be impact. I remember when I was single and I wanted to get a partner, I set a goal to have a partner by a certain time. And one of my daily behaviors that I needed to go through was to go on dating sites and actually engage with them, because my tendency would be that I wasn't going to engage with them at all. People had swiped me on Tinder or whatever and I just wouldn't reply. So I was like, well, if this is going to work, I'm going to have to do some stuff. I'm going to have to put the work in. So I kept in my mind what the positive outcome of being in a relationship would be. And then within probably 6 months of that, I met Katie, who I ended up marrying another year later. Now, after a long day of work, the last thing I wanted to do was swipe through contestants on Tinder. But by remembering the goal and keeping aligned to that, I was able to build a habit out of it because I remembered what the thing was that I was going for, and just constantly reminding myself when I'm feeling low energy is a good way of keeping that motivation up. So going back to the river analogy, gravity pulls the river down a hill, right? That gravity is so strong. That's the thing that the river wants more than anything, is to be at the bottom of that hill. A river doesn't go sideways or wake up one day and think, oh, do you know what? I'm going to try and go uphill. A river never goes uphill because that gravity is pulling it down. So a river doesn't get 5 hours deep into memes on Reddit because it's got this thing that's pulling it all the way down. So that's what your reward needs to be. And then constantly reminding yourself of that reward, whether it's, putting vision things on your desk or setting your phone background or whatever, something that's always there reminding you why you're doing this. Really important to keep that motivation level up. All right, thing number 3 is temptation avoidance. Now, if you're like me, you can't just have one. If a tub of ice cream, a bag of cookies, a box of mince pies, a pack of hot cross buns, any of this kind of seasonal baked goods, if any of those things cross the threshold into this house, there will be 0 survivors. And we're not talking about having one here and there, like, oh, I might have one today and I might have one tomorrow. We're talking about the time between me acquiring the target and their destruction being like milliseconds. Now, I used to beat myself up about this kind of all or nothing thing. Like, if there's a tub of ice cream, I'm gonna eat the whole tub. There's no way I'm gonna put it back and have some later, right? I used to beat myself up about that, but actually I see it as a great strength because I can take that all or nothing mentality into projects I'm working on as well, which is a really good way of seeing them through to completion. But I do recognize the trait, and I know that if the temptation is there, if I'm relying on my self-control not to eat that thing, it's all over. there's nothing there. There's no barrier between me and the thing. So the only way I'm not gonna be 60 stone from eating chocolate is to have no chocolate in the house. It's complete temptation avoidance. If there's bad stuff in that kitchen, I'm gonna eat it. If I've got Twitter on my phone, I'm gonna be watching Donald Trump slurring his words in some speech while my goals drift off into the sunset, right? So the key is know what temptations you're gonna fall victim to and then just don't even allow them on. So on my phone, there are no games because otherwise I would play all the games. On my computer, there are no games because I would be playing the games. If I'm having a really tough time and I'm going on Twitter too much and I realize I'm just reading other people's crap, then I'll just delete Twitter. Like, temptation avoidance for me is all or nothing. I can't have a little bit. It's either I'm all in or I'm all out. Going back to the river analogy, see, this isn't just random. See, when you give in to that temptation, you start to build a river track, and that river track gets deeper and deeper and deeper the more often you do it. So the key is don't even get in the game. There is nothing that's gonna sidetrack me in this house from my goals, and that's how it's been designed. So my wife Katie taught me this. When I first met her, she would buy some sweets and she'd eat a few and then she'd empty them in the bin and then put the pack in the bin. So I'm like, okay babes, what's the story here? What's going on? And she said, I only want a few. If I leave the pack there, I'm gonna eat the whole pack. So the thing is, it's really easy for me to just tip them in the bin. That's a really easy action to take. It's much easier than trying to resist sweets which are in the cupboard. So the fact is, I only want a few. It might seem like a waste putting them in the bin, but actually it's much less wasteful than eating them and making myself unhappy with how I am. So it's about recognizing your tendencies and saying, okay, so this is the game I need to play against myself in order to win. And I was actually in the gym yesterday morning and I was doing an exercise and I'd gone up in weight, so it was a bit heavier. And I found myself towards the end of the exercise saying, yeah, do you know what? I went up in weight, so actually I can stop now. It's fine. I've worked really hard. It's quite sore, yeah. And then I thought, hold on, I'm quitting before I'm done. How often do I do that? And then I thought, do you know what? I do that on pretty much every exercise. When I go up a weight, I'll stop earlier because I'm like, well, I went up a weight, so I'm more tired now, so it's okay for me to stop. I thought, wow, if I'm quitting before I'm done in the gym, I'm probably doing this in other areas of life. So I pushed through and I finished the exercise, and guess what? I could finish the exercise. And now that is one little river track in favor of pushing through and finishing when I'm done, not finishing when I'm tired. I'm conscious of that tendency, so now I'll watch out for it, and I'll watch out for it in all sorts of areas. In work, when I've done a really good day's work and I've finished what I think I should have done for the day, I can be like, oh yeah, I can take it easy now. I can just check Twitter or go and have a look and see when the next MacBook Pro is out. Instead, I'll be like, hold on, mate, you've got more to do. There is more stuff on the list. Keep going until you're finished. So it's about understanding those tendencies, being conscious of the river tracks that you're building, and making sure you're forming positive habits rather than falling prey to temptation. So for me, with those three keys, habits, reminding yourself of the reward, and militant removal of all temptation, keeping motivated is actually fairly straightforward. So what do you think? What keeps you motivated? I'm most interested to know what's the most juicy reward you've ever given yourself for pushing through a particular goal. Speak soon.